Welcome to Let's Chat with Derick. I am your host, Derick Phage, and pleased to introduce today's guest. She is the one and the only Debbie Trenholm, who is the founder of a company that has been an incredible success. She's also a sommelier of Savvy Company. Debbie, how you doing?
Oh, great to see you, Derick. I want to give you a big hug.
Right back at you. I
Right
miss
back at you.
you. It was so, I've talked to so many people where, as you know, my show in Montreal was canceled. I've returned to Ottawa, and before the pandemic, just sort of getting back into doing community events and seeing everybody, and all this momentum was building, and then all of a sudden a pandemic shut us down. So to be able to do this and see people like yourself who from the daytime years, I mean, we've known each other for over a decade
Oh,
now,
yeah. For
right?
so long. Well, thanks
It's
for doing this. You rock.
my pleasure. I love community. I love supporting community. You're one of those great businesses in the community that's had to pivot, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I wanted to start off with talking about, just personally how you've been dealing with the pandemic, you and your family.
Oh, gosh. Well, I come from a very small family. There's just my brother and I, and born and raised in Ottawa, actually in Carp, and very proud of Carp. Did you know that there is a brewery, a winery, and some really cool cafes and restaurants in Carp?
I actually know Carp quite well because my mom lived just outside of Carp. So, and it was one of those places when we were young that we would visit quite often. We had family that sort of lived out in the country out that way.
Right.
And I knew two out of those three. So I'm pretty proud of myself.
Good, good. Well, I'm a very proud Carp girl, and actually, like lots of people, I've started baking bread, and I've always enjoyed doing that. And I was so excited when the Carp flour mill, they call themselves Valley Feed, they started making flour available, not just feed for the farmers and for their livestock, but then they made flour available. So I've got this 10-kilo bag of flour downstairs from Carp. It's like, yay!
Nice.
So I've been surviving, and
Yeah.
it's not been a hardship. It's actually been wonderful to open up my eyes and discover a lot of different things, like the flour mill, which I've known a lot about, but I didn't know I could access it,
Right.
um, and discover new elements of our community, and to be part of that as well. So my family is doing great. Mom and dad, they're big smiles every day and deliver
Nice.
groceries to them, and that's their highlight of their day, and mine as well.
Yeah.
And my brother's out of town, but he's a doctor, so I hear all about the COVID report from his perspective, and
Right.
we're constantly soaking up all the information. But it's strange time, and one of the things is we're all learning this together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that hashtag, right? We're all in this together, and
Yeah.
there's no doubt we've all been through a roller coaster of emotions. I certainly have. I'm sure you have personally. But then on the business side, this has affected so many people's businesses, including your own. And I know you've had to pivot. But before we get to that, I just wanted to sort of take a walk down memory lane with you, Debbie, because I was saying to you off camera, I think you're one of these great, wonderful success stories where you started small and you've just grown this company. I mean, the name has even changed over the years because you've had to change the name because you've expanded so much. So tell me what was the beginning of Savvy Company?
Well, actually, the beginning was even because after I graduated from university, the 2 days later, I was landed a job at Corel, and I went straight into high tech without really even liking computers. And here I was, I just went from one computer job or one high tech job to the next, which was very fortunate for me, starting out in a career. And then I slammed on the brakes and said, hold on a second, high tech is getting far too technical for me.
Really?
And I really wanted to take a break from it and figure out what I wanted to do with my life when I was like 30.
Okay.
Um, so I did my executive MBA, so that meant I was still working in high tech as I was dabbling in other industries and learning, and getting my master's degree. But I also at that time had already completed the sommelier program at Algonquin, purely out of interest. I wanted to
I was
learn
going to
more
ask you,
about the world
yeah.
of wine.
You were just drawn to it because you had an interest in wine. It was that simple.
Well, it was that, and then also with my high-tech job, I was traveling a lot, and I had the great fortune of
Okay.
going over to Europe a lot. And I'll tell you, I would only ever order the house wine when I was going off to these fancy restaurants where I was entertaining clients and things. And a big aha moment was when I actually was given a wine list, and it must have been that thick. And I just flipped to page one and ordered the first thing on the list. And I was like, what's in the rest of it? I didn't know. So that's when I thought, right, I want to learn about the world of wine that I'm missing. I went to Portugal on a business trip, and I never drank a drop of port. I'm kicking myself because I love this stuff
Oh
now,
yeah.
but I didn't know any better. So that's when I wanted to learn more about the world of wine through travel, because pretty much every country has some kind of wine-like product, and I wanted to learn about that. So it was a way to travel as well. Um, so with that, then I started learning more about the business of wine while I was
Okay.
doing my MBA. And that's where I either had some job opportunities to work in the wine world or do what I started, my God, 16 years ago. The longest job I've ever had, and I can't get out.
I wanted to stop you there quickly because you said then you wanted to learn the business of wine. You know, most of us we have no idea what that means. What do you mean by the business of wine? What's behind that bottle of wine that we purchase?
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of components behind the bottle of wine. And when you look at anything, you look at an object, right? Something that's been manufactured. Wine has been grown and then manufactured for us and
Right.
created. You look at all the different parts. Even look at your laptop that you and I have in front of us right now. There, 100 keys, and there's all kinds of screws and all the different bits and pieces, and there's a cost of good for everything,
Right.
right? So when the final production is done of your laptop, as an example, you know exactly how much that cost, and then you know what the price is that you're going to go to market. So I wanted to learn more about the cost of the overall production of a bottle of wine. And often when I was doing some work with winemakers and winery owners, I would say, what's the cost of the grape? And very rarely could anybody tell me. And
Really?
that's the major component of wine. Now, that was 15 years ago when I was starting, and I was mainly talking to Canadian winemakers, and they were all just starting really at that time too. So
Yeah.
everybody was just like, let's go. And cost of what? No, I just know that this is what I have to do. So now when they start talking about the cost of and the business side of wine, I think we're so much more advanced now than we were before, because a bottle cost about $1, the screw cap cost 30 cents, the cork cost something, the label cost something, the land that they grew the grapes that cost something, and all the labor and so on and so forth. A lot of it is added up. Then you add the taxes and the prices, and then the story has a cost as well. There's all kind of elements of it, and that's just to get the bottle out the door.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
because I
it's
think we've all wondered, why is it there's a $12 bottle of wine and then I hear that I there's a $400 bottle of wine. How can something how can one product, right, be so different, and
yes.
especially, a product like that. I think it's hard for us to imagine how that's possible.
Mm-hmm. And it is really interesting, and that shift, that big gap is created through so many different ways. Even I talk to winemakers and say, so how do you decide what a price is? And if you look at it, pick your favorite wine as an example, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Year over year, it's probably pretty much the same price.
Yeah,
If
that's
it's
true
fifteen
actually.
dollars
Yeah.
now, it probably was $15 last year, and maybe 14.95 the year before. So the price hasn't really gone up, although regular cost of things is and cost of living has gone up. We won't get too technical in this, but it's also really interesting, to go on to your point. I was at a wine conference. Yes, there is a wine conference, and this is a big deal.
Okay.
An international wine conference, and I was at a luncheon event, and I was sitting beside this man who we chatted for hours and hours and hours, and almost the rest of the world around us at this conference disappeared. And at the end, I said, Jose, tell me more about which winery you work for? And he goes, actually, I own Fusion, Zicardi Winery. And I said, what wine do you export or to Canada? And he goes, oh, you may have heard of it. It's called Fusion. And I said, Fusion?
Yeah, I
And
know
at
the
that
wine.
time,
Yeah.
it was the $7.45 bottle of Malbec Shiraz that
Yep.
was coming into Canada. And I looked at him, and he's this wonderful man who is probably in his 60s. And he
Okay.
told me that he got up at 6 o'clock every morning to have English lessons before he even had his coffee. He would spend an hour with his English tutor to teach him English so that he was as proficient as he was chatting with me. He's from Buenos Aires in
Okay.
Argentina. And I was talking to him, and I was like, how do you make wine for $7.45 on the other side of the globe and bring it up to Canada, and it's the top selling wine?
No
Is that the
kidding.
funny thing is he actually sources the screw cap, the little metal bit that's the screw cap. He
Yeah.
sources that from Canada.
It's incredible. I can't believe that that's the winery too, because it actually happens to be, two of our good friends. It's their favorite sort of go-to wine,
Yeah,
right? I've had it many times. It's a very good wine.
it's a very good wine. And I asked him, why is it so inexpensive? Because it's his decision what price he puts on it,
Right.
right? And without sounding too romantic, he basically said, Debbie, wine is something that you should share with friends and family. And it usually puts a smile on your face. So why not make it as most reasonable as possible? Now, remember that this man owns so many properties and has so much wine that he actually, because of fusion, or as he says, fusion,
Right.
because of that wine, he was able, and the popularity of that wine, he was able to secure about 10 or 12 more spots at the LCBO with other wines. So he was able just to
Wow.
get in and explode into Ontario, and it actually brought Argentina to the second or the third most ranked country purely because of that wine in
Incredible.
terms of the wine sales in Ontario. So it's remarkable, but you know, he's a businessman as well,
Yeah,
and
for sure. But what a great story. And you mentioned, getting on. I mean, it's a totally different conversation. We won't go in depth on it, but I've talked to, people that have distilleries, and so we're seeing all these craft distilleries pop up and so forth. And just to get on the shelf, how
yeah,
difficult that is. People have no idea how hard it is to get onto the LCBO shelf. I mean, it's a real challenge for
yeah.
people out there. Deb, let's move forward a little bit. So you become a sommelier. You start, of course, falling in love with this. And then when did you turn it into your career, your business?
Well, I left my high tech company that I was working with at the time called Fastlane. It was one of the Newbridge affiliates, which seemed like ages ago, and it was. And it was also at the time when the Canadian wine industry was just starting, excuse me, just starting to explode. The Canadian wine industry has been in place for probably about 30, 35 years with the likes of Chateau de Charme and Hillebrand and Peller Estates. But a lot of the new wineries have only just been around for 10, 15 years. And some of
Right.
them are starting to celebrate those big milestones. Um, and I was curious about that because I've always been interested in helping smaller businesses grow. I started with Corral just as it was exploding. I started with some smaller high tech companies and helped put them on their map in their industry. So I wanted to do the same thing. And um, I did my executive MBA through Queen's, which was a stepping stone for me to explore other industries outside of high tech where I was working.
Okay.
And naturally, because I knew lots about wine from my interest in the education from Algonquin, doing sommelier in the evening and doing that program, I thought, well, let's see what the wine industry has to be doing. And they were growing as quickly, and I was like, hey, I can help, and I
Right.
just took that attitude. Um, And so I had opportunities to join a couple of wineries, or I had the opportunity to be independent and do what I do. And that's when the Savvy Grapes started, which
Right.
5 years shortly after being called the Savvy Grapes, we expanded into Savvy Company.
And what was the reason for that expansion? I mentioned off the top that you started doing different things. So what did it go from, and then what does it become today?
Sure. Well, with the wine industry was growing, and I was also seeing that the craft beer industry was growing, cheese and cider as well. I wanted to give myself a little bit more room to grow because the business was growing. I was personally growing, learning more about other areas and that I could, other industries that I could help with. And that's when I decided to change to Savvy Company.
Right.
And it's a play on words. You're in good company with us. And then it's also a business, not just a one gal show, that has lots of other people, lots of other sommeliers working with me.
Yeah, and you mentioned cheese. I mean, I've been to some of your events, and I've never ever looked at cheese the same way again. Seriously. I mean, and wine too. I mean, but that goes without saying, right? I mean, you've been
Yeah,
in that business since the beginning, but I remember Vanessa, one of your cheese sommeliers, introducing us to these cheeses and just how to taste it, and how to make sure that you leave it out before you eat it, and certain
yeah,
cheeses goes with you know perhaps a dessert wine, or it just opened my eyes. And Monica and I, it's interesting because of that event, we've never looked at cheese the same way. So and sure, we'll go to the grocery store every once in a while and get something because we're gonna throw together grilled cheese sandwiches or something at the last second. But now we actually go to specialty shops here in the city that have cheeses that you're not going to get anywhere else. And there's no doubt that some are more expensive than others, but you
yeah.
kind of find the ones that you can afford, that fit into your budget. And it's a lot of fun actually having people over and introducing them to different cheeses and different wines.
Well, and I certainly love exactly what you mentioned is the experience of introducing people like yourselves or people who are watching to the people that I get to meet who own winemakers or make wine, or now craft cider is exploding in
Yeah.
Ontario, cheese makers as well. And I'm just finding that they are such interesting people. A lot of them think of themselves as farmers.
Yeah.
And then, first and foremost, they're farmers. And maybe it's the country girl roots that I have from from living in Carp and growing up in Carp, but or maybe it's just the natural connection to the whole uh, local businesses that we have, and making the opportunity available to discover new things. And that's why we have now a wine of the month club, a cheese of the month club, a cider of the month club, and then we're also doing these care packages that has happened because of the whole pandemic, to allow people to explore through the eyes or with the guide of a sommelier, with somebody who knows.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mentioned off the top we were going to get to that, how the pandemic's affected your business. You've obviously, being the great entrepreneur that you are, you've pivoted and you've found a way to keep, because events were a big part of your business, obviously, but you have the, wine of the month club and beer of the month club and that sort of thing. So what have you had to change? What kind of impact has it had? Notwithstanding, of course, you can't put on big events.
Well, we do lots of large scale events, as you mentioned, and I was so proud of our team because we had 2020 calendar for events planned as of November of last year.
So many
And
people
we
I've
were
talked to,
so
Deb.
organized, and
Uh,
ah, all the venues were booked and speakers were booked, and we were just like right on. And we celebrated as well how far ahead we were in the whole planning of it all. And then one by one, we were able to do one event this year, and that
right.
was a by invitation only event in March, on March the 2nd. And then we know what happened after that. But I hate canceling an event or postponing events. And
Right.
so when we get the green light to do events, we certainly will, under the rules and regulations or under the guidelines of the Ontario Health Authorities and City of Ottawa as well.
Yeah.
So we will be back, and we know how to do those events, and we will turn those around quite quickly. It's amazing the number of people who are clamoring and asking me, when will the tickets go on sale for, your event in November? Like, I don't know yet. Just hang tight, hang tight.
Yeah.
We have a large wine festival that we kicked off last year that we host in Kingston. It was supposed to be at the end of April. We postponed it till September. If we have to postpone it again, we will, but we definitely are committed to doing these type of events. So meanwhile, these events are all experiences where you get to meet the makers and then order anything that you like. So what we've done is, because we can't do events, we've really focused in on just the ordering part. And it's not doing custom orders necessarily for people like yourself or anybody who wants, but more of as a sommelier, I will pick the best. This is what you want. Let me bring to you a curated package of fantastic wine, cider, and cheese. And that's what we've been delivering. So COVID and the whole lockdown has been a wonderful experience for us because people are more accepting and are willing to have things delivered to their doorstep. Before, I think having wine delivered was kind of an unusual, or it was something special. It was a treat, or maybe it was something that, only my neighbors do. Now people were calling on us and saying, I don't want to stand in line at the LCBO, or I don't know what I want. Just give me some really good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what they're counting on us to do.
Well, it's great to have somebody with your expertise, right? As you said, you could go on and, go to the LCBO website and order something, but you don't necessarily know what you're ordering. And I would rather, use somebody like yourself that's a sommelier with an expertise that will introduce me to something new, right? And that's something you don't necessarily get to do, especially during a pandemic, and that you're offering this. I could just see an explosion of people going, no, you know what? I'm stuck at home. I want to try something different. And, I don't want to stand in line at the LCBO for a half an hour, right? 6 feet apart from each other.
Exactly. And I have to admit, I've never worked harder in my life.
Really, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I had to peel back the team of sommeliers and people who work with me. We had to basically peel that back down to the royal we, me, myself, and I. And now we're at a point where we're able to bring more people back on as part of the team, and I'm so glad for that. But up until now, it's been I've been that entrepreneur again, come 100%, and it's my business, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to see it survive, and so I'm going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And I've been blessed by the patience of my customers and the willingness of people to give us a try. And the number of people who said, I didn't know you guys existed. And it's not just in Ottawa, across the province.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I'm learning more Ontario geography about where I'm sending parcels. Because I'm getting orders, and I was like, how do you know about us? And so it's wonderful, the expansion of the business, and the support of the media as well has been terrific in helping me get the word out about what we're doing. Right. People want deliveries, and having wine delivered is important.
Well, and I think it's one of those, I think it's great too, because it's one of those things where, first of all, you have such a variety, right? Where it's beer and cheese and wine and cider. And so if you've got maybe a family member that, you've been social distancing from, and you want to, just let them know that, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about you. That what a great gift to send to somebody, right?
And we have been doing a lot of gifts for that, and exactly that reason. And the other thing that I've really learned is the importance of what we're doing for the wine industry and the cider and the cheese industries.
Yes.
And the number of times when a smaller winery or any size cidery or even a cheesemaker, they've said, your orders, or the orders that you have created for us have helped me with payroll, or have been fantastic for my sales, or have helped whatever, right? Everybody is doing their own thing, and certainly you can order directly from a winery. You can order directly from the cheesemaker if you want, and the same with the cidery, or order from us, and we will facilitate the orders as well. So sometimes it's confusing as to, well, I want a bunch of different things, but I don't know what. That's where you come to Savvy Company. And then what we're also finding is a lot of people said, I discovered something in the parcel that you sent me. I want more of that. I was like, yep, no problem. I will get hold of that. And it really does my heart good when I hear about these kind of, you've opened my eyes to, or I've really enjoyed discovering. So a lot of, and I say this a lot, is that the ultimate way, the Savvy care packages, is what we call them, is the ultimate way to support local. Because you're supporting everybody who we have put inside the box, whether it's cider or cheese or wine. Plus, you're supporting the independent courier companies that I work with, and you're helping us as well. And so we're all really benefiting from it.
I'm glad
and
you
I
mentioned
thank everybody.
Yeah, and Deb, I'm glad you mentioned the trickle down effect, Debbie, because sometimes we just don't think about that, right? We're not just supporting Savvy Company, as you said, we're supporting all of these other businesses who, their survival at this time is oftentimes, right? Like when we talk about right now, this is the time where people are visiting, right? This is where the tours happen, and everybody's reluctant, of course, and following the guidelines of going out there and visiting, which hopefully I hope people, and I talked about this with another sommelier, is that, once this pandemic is over and once the restrictions are lifted somewhat, is that you do go to Niagara-on-the-Lake and you do go to Prince Edward County and you do go to Carp and find out that there's a winery there and that there's a brewery there and that there's cideries here in Ontario that are a short drive, and, just do your homework and support those local businesses, because their very survival, right, depends on all of us.
Mm-hmm. And they are small businesses, and what's really interesting is, while we're not visiting them, they're just as busy, because the grapes don't know that it's a pandemic, and neither do the cows or the goats or the sheep, right? And so there's actually some silver linings in the situation with the pandemic, and a good example is there's a winery in Prince Edward County called Lighthall Vineyards. And Lighthall, you may have met them at one of our events. He's a one-man show, and Glenn makes fabulous wines, and he also is a self-taught cheesemaker.
Does he have the moth on the bottle?
Yeah, that's the one.
Is he the one with the moth? Yes, I thought I'd recognize. Okay, well, I know the one.
And so he makes this really amazing sheep's cheeses, and people try it at the winery, and then they want some of it, right? Right. And so I've been bugging Glenn for years. He's probably been making this cheese for about 5 years now, and I every time say, can I get some of that cheese to send to our cheese club? No, sorry, it's all gone. So in April, I called him and I said, so how is the cheese situation? He was like, you want some? I got tons of it. I was like, yes.
Finally.
So we were able to get and help him, because he made all this cheese over the winter and was gearing up for, the explosion of April, May, June, and July of all the tourists, and they weren't coming. So when I called and said, I won't tell you how many kilos of cheese. A lot.
Yeah, and he was happy to hear it.
I told him I need a lot of cheese. He was like, no problem.
What a small world, because Monica and I, not only did we meet that winery at one of your events, we actually visited and we met Glenn at the winery, and we loved it. I think we bought like an entire case of his wine. Yeah, no, he's one of those, as you said, one-man show, right? Doing it all himself. I think I remember, wasn't he in high tech as well?
He's a pharmacist.
Oh, that's what it was. He was a pharmacist, yes. And the chemistry of wine was really interesting, right, to him.
Yeah.
Man, that is so cool. I can't wait to tell Monica this story. This is great.
So there's stories like that I love to share, and people I love to introduce. And that's what I've been doing with our clubs, our care packages, our events, and the people who work with me do the same thing. And is that, hey, I met this really cool person. I want you to try their wine, cider, cheese, and get to meet them at our events. And so
Yeah.
we'll be doing some of these online video tastings with some of
Oh,
those winemakers and cheesemakers as well. Um, Once we all kind of get into the groove of what it's looking like, because right now, being the middle of June, wineries and cideries are welcoming people, maybe by appointment only,
yeah.
or by if by chance. So it's not the mad rush of people there, but they're getting ready. And
Yeah.
the cheesemakers, they're waiting for the farmers markets to open up before they start inviting people to their place or start seeing more activity with them. So, but we'll just keep on doing what we're doing for a
I'm
while
glad
still.
Glad to hear, Deb. As I said off the top, you're just a great success story, an amazing entrepreneur. I want to let everybody know they can go to savvycompany.ca to find out all the information. On there, they can also, I imagine, subscribe to your newsletter as well, right? So they can keep
Mhm.
up to date on everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. And we've got Instagram and Facebook and the usual, or just give us a call and we'd be happy to chat.
Terrific, Debbie. Thanks so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And keep up the good work. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, Deb. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.